Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Later in the programme, the President of Armenia will be here. And the former head of BP, outstanding businessman, but with a fascinating personal story as well. Plus, Hollywood actor Bill Nighy's here with his new Robin Hood tax. But first, Iran. Tens of thousands of Iranians took the streets of Tehran on Thursday to mark the 31st anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. The marchers were joined by large numbers of government security forces who were there to break up protests by the opposition Green movement. And I'm joined now by a man with first-hand experience of those security forces. Maziar Bahari is a Canadian-Iranian journalist who's been Newsweeks Iran correspondent for the last 10 years. Last year he was imprisoned in Tehran's notorious Evin Prison for 118 days. And he joins us now from New York. First of all, the first question, Maziar, who did well out of those marches and rallies yesterday in Tehran? I mean, will the government or the opposition be most pleased with the way it went? I suppose the government will.
Well, I think that the government feels somehow satisfied because they were able to contain the demonstrators, and they went through a whole process of arresting journalists. They arrested 20 journalists in the last 1 month, and they shut down all the social networking sites like Facebook and Twitter. They narrowed the internet bandwidth. So, and there were hundreds of thousands of security forces and revolutionary guards on the streets of Tehran and other major cities. So I think the government will feel satisfied with containing the demonstrations. But I think the government will be foolish if they think that they have succeeded, because for how long they can continue to use brute force in order to suppress people's movement, people's peaceful movement. And I think the government should really think about the next round of demonstrations and the way that the other ways that people find to communicate with each other, to circumvent the filters, the internet filters, and use satellite technology in order to communicate with each other.
And what about the figures yesterday? I mean, do you think we have any sense of what, because of the censorship of what's going on in addition to the security forces, do we have any sense really of how many opposition people were out in the streets in these various places, in these various cities, compared to the number of security forces and people bussed in, as it were, by the government?
It's impossible to know the percentage, and if in other parts of the world 70% of the statistics are made up, in Iran it's 100% of the statistics are made up, and it's impossible. But what we know is that the government ask all government employees to be present at their offices in the morning, and then they bus them to the demonstration. And if a government employee was not present in the demonstrations, they would be punished. I'm not sure how. They would be fired, or they would have other kinds of punishment. So the government really tried its best to bring its supporters and its employees to the streets.
And what's going to happen to this Islamic Revolution in Iran, do you think, Maziar? Because the situation there is, well, it looks as though the government still have the will to live, in a sense, not very pleasantly, I don't mean, but I mean just whereas communism lost the will to live. Does Iran's government have the will to live to keep democracy away, to make sure it doesn't come in, or is there an inevitability that in the end the crowds will win?
I think it is inevitable that people will win. Prophet of Islam has said that no government can survive through suppression. And you asked me what happens to the Islamic Revolution. I think the Islamic Revolution is just a memory now. Iranian people had a revolution in order to establish an Islamic Republic. Right now, we are witnessing a regime in Iran that has lost its popular legitimacy because it does not consider people's votes, and it also has lost religious legitimacy because many clerics, if not most of the clerics in Iran, they do not regard this government as a religious government. Iran has become more of a military dictatorship with the revolutionary guards at the helm of power in Iran, and it's not a theocracy anymore.
And you had those 118 days in Evin Prison. How many journalists are being picked up? How many do you suspect there are a lot of journalists in Evin Prison now where you were?
At the moment, we know that there are 65 journalists, bloggers, and writers are in Iranian jails, not in Evin, but all around Iran. And actually, I'm part of a campaign which kicked off yesterday, and it will continue for 1 month. And we are trying to put pressure on the Iranian government and try to publicize the case of the 65 journalists who are in jail just for holding a mirror against the actions of the Iranian government. And for the Iranian government to think that they can solve the unemployment problem, the problems with the environment, and their own corruption and inefficiencies by arresting journalists, people who are just reflecting the reality in the country, it's just counterproductive, to say the least, because journalists in Iran, as in many other countries, they are there to work as a kind of a safety valve in order to allow people to vent their anger against the government. And by suppressing this safety valve, it's just going to bring the country to the point of explosion. And I'm sure that we will see an explosion one way or another very soon in Iran. And when I say very soon, it's very soon in terms of the historical context of Iran, the 2,500 years of history. It very soon can be in 6 months, it can be in 2 years or 3 years. No one knows. But these actions of the Iranian government will result in an explosion as well as an implosion of the government.
Maziar, thank you very, very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'll be talking to the president of Armenia after this incredibly short break.